because this is the first time that we've really had spiritual people coming out of ashrams and monasteries just in the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years and integrating as householders where they work in jobs, they have wives, husbands, children, and we are now seeing these two worlds converge. And so we've got to change our relationship with spirituality and money. It's a really big shift that needs to take place. And it's the first time we've really seen people going into careers that are contributing things like plumbers and electricians. They're all getting paid and they're all getting rewarded for their contribution to the world. And so should people that are bringing health and wellness and spirituality as well through this space.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and Sifu Taoist Master Sun Qing, and I have a brother from another mother here today, another fellow Aussie. Here we are merging together with a realization of all things consciousness. Tom Cronin is here. Now, he is sort of like taken a major leap from things that are far more constructed within sort of what someone would define as materialism to spirituality and all things in between. Welcome to the podcast today, my friend.
It's great to be here. Looking forward to our chats.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. You touched my heart just hearing your accent. I just get all warm and fuzzy inside. So why don't you share with the audience a little bit more about your backstory leading up to this point when we're having this conversation today?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with now. So I'm a meditation teacher, author, speaker, work with some of the top companies like Amazon, Coca-Cola, Qantas, teaching meditation, mindfulness, stress reduction, stress management. And many years ago, I was a broker in finance. I started my career the same year Jordan Belfort did, The Wolf of Wall Street, in 1987. And that's going back quite some time. We're just talking about the 80s and how that was an incredible period of time. And back then, there was no meditation, no yoga, really. It was very unheard of, very unspoken. And I was deep in the finance world. I started my career as a 19-year-old and I got swept into that culture of the wild west of the finance markets back in the late 80s, early 90s, and was very much looked like Wolf of Wall Street. They really conveyed that really well, what was going on back then. It was really crazy times. And I kind of just bought into that culture. Before long, I'm doing lots of drugs, drinking, staying out late, partying, very hedonistic, very narcissistic. And the beautiful thing about the universe is that it's constantly guiding us and supporting us and trying to nudge us in a direction that is a path for for greater harmony. And I was quite ignorant for a long time of that sort of guidance system that was coming through. And that was, I was getting a lot of anxiety, a lot of panic attacks, a lot of depression. And I wasn't able to listen to what that communication was all about. And I just ignored that, which meant that the pain and the suffering got exacerbated. And that eventually blew up in the sort of mid-90s. And I had this sort of full-blown, almost nervous breakdown where I was in a really dark spiral, a dark depression. I was getting extreme panic attacks. And then in the end, I had to see psychiatrists, doctors, psychologists, put on medication, was having some suicidal tendencies or thoughts. And it was a really bleak time, but it was also that sort of dark night of the soul that I really almost had to go through, that abject misery and complete surrender, beaten into submission, where eventually I was open to another way forward. And interestingly, the universe organized that nicely for me. I came across a documentary about a property developer here in Australia that was all about his success, and I was into success. So I was watching that for that reason. But there was a tiny slither in that story, in that documentary, just 2 minutes or so, where he talked about how he used meditation as a device for his stress management. And he talked about transcendental meditation. At that time, I was into transcending because I was into taking lots of drugs and getting out of it. And so when I heard this idea of transcending in meditation, it really caught my attention and I got very excited. And so I did something a bit unusual for people listening on the call who weren't around in the 80s. I picked up the Yellow Pages phone book, which was what we used as Google back then. Yeah. And I started searching meditation, and there in bright red, you could pay to have your brand or your business in red to get it more noticed. And in bright red was transcendental meditation. So it was my journey into meditation. I started researching a lot of different styles of meditation, a lot of techniques, but the one that I really resonated was this deep meditation, partly because of the efficiency and effectiveness of the meditation, but also it came through this long lineage and deep tradition of thousands of years of support. And I really resonated with that. So that was where I started.
Wow. Wow. And would you say you incorporate still principles of that or mechanisms of that style of meditation today?
Yeah, absolutely. It's still the foundation after 27 years of using that practice every day, twice a day. I still sit with 20 minutes of meditation, using that as a beautiful mechanism to withdraw from the world of duality and form and phenomenon. And there's nothing wrong with that world. We want to really immerse and integrate into that world, but incorporate within that the unmanifest, the unbounded, the immaterial. And to infuse those two worlds together is what I really see as successful spirituality. And I think that that's the missing link for humanity, is to not just have form and phenomenon. Yes, it's okay to have nice cars and nice houses and have holidays, but can we integrate and embody the spiritual experience as well? And so for me, it's the traditions, the teachings, and I've incorporated a lot more other. We were talking about Taoism as well, and I really see a nice synergy with those traditions coming in together. And I tap into all different styles of religions, practices, meditations, spiritual movements, and practices as like breath work and yoga as well.
Wow. Wow. So looking at this, so you sort of progressed into this. So this would, you also have a couple of hats on. You're a filmmaker. You do other things, guide people in sort of transformative sort of realization. What would you say is the thing that takes up most of your time these days?
That's a great question. It is quite diverse. I'm doing a keynote presentation at an equity firm tomorrow, venture capital firm. Today, I've just been teaching a gentleman a private class of how to do Vedic meditation or transcendental meditation. I'm running a retreat in a couple of weeks. So it is quite diverse and balanced. I do a lot of mentoring for yoga teachers, meditation teachers, healers, how to build their spiritual businesses. So that's a big part of what I do, is support other teachers and leaders in this space, how to get the mechanics of a sustainable business, because this is a very new phenomenon where we haven't really had spiritual people who are becoming, I guess, leaders and guides in this world. Traditionally they were in monasteries and ashrams and belonged to religions, whereas now we've got mums and dads who are actually making this a business, where they're seeing this just like a plumber, electrician, meditation teacher, yoga teacher. These people play an integral role in our society. So helping them build sustainable businesses so they can work in them full time is a big part of what I do these days as well. The film was something that I integrated as part of my system for getting the message out to the world about meditation. It was a bit of a beast of a journey, I have to say, for a meditation teacher making a film about meditation. I couldn't believe how stressful that was as an experience. It's quite ironic how challenging that was to make a film. But that film is out there. We're gifting that to the world now. It's called The Portal, and it really is showcasing the power of meditation to help us through crisis.
Oh, wow. That sounds amazing. It is interesting being in this space over 30 years, the sort of the crossover. I've worked with, thousands of people, but, when it comes to helping people cross over, they always come back to the energy as a center point of realization. Whether I've worked with someone who's a psychiatrist, a therapist, a doctor, a neuroscientist, whatever it is, nothing beats consciousness.
Hmm.
And so when you understand that, though the foundation is a great starting point, but then stepping into that realization of the present moment is where profound things start taking place. And so from the world of like healing, I really am very grateful that people like yourself are guiding people in this space, because I come across students that have got 47,000 pieces of paper telling them they're amazing, yet they fall back on realizing, I've got all this paperwork. I'm a doctor of Chinese medicine. I'm this, I'm that, I'm something else. And now I'm earning $40 an hour and I can't pay back the $500,000 worth of education I just created. And so there's this fundamental disconnection. And then they feel compelled that they're replicating what I like to call virtue signaling. They're surrendering to it, but in essence, they don't realize that, there's still this frequency that has to be transmitted so that they can create an existence, so they can continue helping and healing people. They should be compensated for their time and what they're doing. And this is where I've realized so many people cannot cross that threshold, and they sort of get, it's the icky yicky spot part of healing where they cannot, excuse me, sorry about that, where they cannot they can't cross over. So, you know, I'll take someone who makes $200 an hour, $500 an hour to $100,000 an hour, just by valuing themselves and understanding that, guess what? It's okay. It's completely okay, you know. And it's keynote speaker. I guarantee you, when you start to get into these spaces, you start being compensated for that because of the value of your intellectual property, what you actually share with the audience, and what that takeaway is in micro to macro version, and what they can get from it. And so when they get past this part, oh, it makes me feel icky. Hang on. Don't worry that I took grandma out of a coma, or that she was supposed to die in the next 24 hours. I don't want to charge for that, because that wouldn't be spiritual. Heads up, guys. I got news for you. The universe doesn't have a moral compass. So when you start ascending to this high level of consciousness, you just start sharing, and your ability to gravitate to high frequencies and manifest sort of things that technically wouldn't be possible are possible. And it's a state of where you're at. What do you say to that, Tom?
Yeah, you know, I love this quote. While you were speaking, I was thinking of this. Ram Dass says, seek enlightenment and make sure you pay your electricity bill. And, you know, it's we've come into this really interesting time now, which is a very unique time. Traditionally, in the past, for thousands of years, we had the people that had money, which were into the world of form, substance, matter. And the people that were into spirituality would not connect with money. So they lived in ashrams, monasteries, and they had lived a very renunciant lifestyle. And we never really had those two worlds converge. They were so separated and so segregated that the spiritual people lived in monasteries and ashrams right up in the mountains, away from anything that could ever do with money. They really didn't want to be involved in that world. And they saw those two things as very separate. And the rich people were usually a little bit nefarious and controlling. And you know, if we look at the sort of the very aristocratic type of existence for thousands of years, and we still have the big banking system, the big pharma system, the big military industrial complex system. So look at where the money is and look where spirituality is. And those worlds have usually been very separated. And what we're trying to do now, and a big teaching in my coaching program, is to help the people that are bringing the biggest and the most important contributions to the planet to be the wealthy people, and to not see this separation. Because if you're bringing some contribution to the elevation, the uplift, the harmonization of the planet, then we really want to make sure that there's a financial contribution that's being made for those people, and stop this whole, this is right or wrong, money-wise, spirituality-wise, and see if we can integrate. Because this is the first time that we've really had spiritual people coming out of ashrams and monasteries just in the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and integrating as householders, where they work in jobs, they have wives, husbands, children, and we are now seeing these two worlds converge. And so we've got to change our relationship with spirituality and money. It's a really big shift that needs to take place. And it's the first time we've really seen people going into careers that are contributing things like plumbers and electricians and fire engine firemen, and, you know, people working in the police department. They're all getting paid, and they're all getting rewarded for their contribution to the world. And so should people that are bringing health and wellness and spirituality as well through this space.
Oh, I concur 100%, because, you know, I spent many decades, I wouldn't say sort of helping people throughout the peninsula of San Francisco, sort of Fortune 500 CEOs, using my skill set, more the socialites, the affluent people throughout the Bay Area. They would pay me for my time to do things like read their upper management's auras, all the kind of like esoteric sort of like level stuff where you're helping a certain group of people that have the means to obtain this sort of access. Because anyone has never come across someone like myself who integrates the very value of, I'm worth this much. If you want this, I will be more than happy to charge you. And that's okay, because I find that someone that receives a healing, if they don't pay for it to some degree, there's no value to it. It becomes dismissive, and in actuality, they repeat the same thing, and they fall back into the same pattern, and the recognition of that same frequency then reoccurs and returns back, and it's not something that becomes solid and is actually changing the whole fractal behavior of their cycle, of their humanness. So the value is so important. What you're doing is really priceless in how you're helping people understand that they need to value themselves to a level where, yes, they have an insight, a level of consciousness that average people are not obtaining. But let's be honest, in the last 10 years, you could, 20, I've been doing this 30 years. 30 years ago, most people were like, let's keep this a hidden, dirty secret. You're the magic man who could do the crazy healings and all this kind of stuff. I'll keep it in my network, and I'm not going to let anyone know because you're my jester. You're my court jester. And I kind of I got exhausted from that. And so this is sort of like throughout Chinese history, the Taoist priest or the Taoist council had always been on the side of any emperor throughout Chinese history, because they had greater insight into divination. And so this type of insight or internal cultivation was held secret and was not shared with the world. I'm on the complete opposite. My guides are, I'm probably, a lot of people like, I get students that are like in the financial system as very, very successful realtors, brokers, whatever. And they come to me and they're like, but Taoism, isn't that a man thing? I'm like, oh, no. When you understand the true nature of it, and we refer to them, and that charge you and I got, we just shared right now, that's a realization. That is the mother of all things. And people are like, did you just say Tao is the mother of all things? Oh, yes. When you understand the true nature of where the creation of the universe comes from, we use all different types of levels of understanding, but there is a certain point that's across all platforms. And if you delve deeper into sort of any type of indigenous ritual, there is a level of understanding that the creation of the universe comes from the uterus, which is a whole nother ballgame. You get deeper into these layers of understanding, but there are no coincidences when it comes to numerology that we consider 9 being the most powerful number. It takes 9 months to create a human life. In lots of ways, when it comes back to Taoist understanding, we go back to the creation of the cosmos, which takes 9 cycles of stages of evolution through the 3 pure ones, the supreme purity, jade purity, highest purity, to create the cosmos and all the things that we know and understand about that. So when you go and you identify this power that you have, Tom, and the insight that you can take from all the incredible practices and understandings from the last 30 years you've been doing this, and you bring it forth, and you're able to help people that fundamentally they need an understanding of the financial system. They need to understand their self-worth. They're putting this out there, and they're helping people accessing a level of consciousness, but they're not able to find this middle ground or this place of wholeness that comes from just being compensated. And they can determine what that is, whether it's $1, whether it's $1 million, that's for them to decide. But that then transfers a frequency in everything that I've seen over my lifetime in this space. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think what we need to do on the planet is to reassess values. For a long time, we've had a misplaced allocation of values towards things that aren't necessarily contributing value. So if you think at this very moment on the planet, how many billions, if not possibly trillions of dollars are being exchanged in bottle shops and bars for alcohol. And the exchange is being made because I will give you something of value, my money that I've worked hard for that week, and you give me something of value, a shot of whiskey or a can of beer, and that's going to make some value added into my life. So I'm gonna make that exchange because I think it'll add some value into my life. But of course, if we look at the deterioration of our society just simply around alcohol alone, we can see the amount of suffering that has been caused. Crashed cars and domestic violence and all sorts of things, livers, kidneys, and we can take that again, and we can take that into cigarettes, and then we can take that into vaping. We can take that into fentanyl. We can take that into OxyContin. I know that can contribute some value in some people's lives, but predominantly it's deteriorated a lot of lives and caused and wreaked havoc in a lot of lives. And yet we don't question that the people that are creating these products are extremely affluent and wealthy. And we don't question that they're making large sums of money. We don't challenge those people on that. We have no problem at all that they're making large sums of money on that. Yet as soon as someone might charge for a meditation program, then some people can get up in arms about that. How dare you? That's just, this should be free. You should be giving this away. Yet not realizing the immense level of education, training, and contribution that person's gone through to actually get to that point, to deliver something that will add a lot of value to that person's life for a long period of time. And so what we're going through is this reassessment of what are values, what do we value in life, and what is beneficial, what is contributing in a better way to humanity. And that's something that it's going to take a big shift for us. We don't value the ocean. We value the whales in the ocean. We don't value a tree. We value the 4x2 out of a tree. We don't value a bee. We value the honey. So we're in a commoditization and extraction mentality when it comes to our world at the moment. And that's something that people like yourself will start to make a difference and start to make that paradigm shift simply by doing what you're doing. And it's going to take some time, but it's really exciting because now people even just want to look at retreats. People would value a holiday going to Cancun and drinking pina coladas from 10 in the morning. Whereas now people are going, well, I'm thinking that maybe a 7-day retreat in Bali where I'm doing breathwork, meditation, and yoga might be more value adding for the long term for my life over the next 12 months by me learning how to do these things and resetting my body, resetting my mind, getting clear on my visions and goals, and optimizing my physiology, as opposed to taking a 2-week break where I can sit on a deck chair, get some sun and a pina colada, and then within 3 weeks going back to work, I'm back in stress mode again.
Wow. Well said. I mean, you do that transition I had from the whole inner circle affluent sort of cycle where I was touching on thousands of people, turned into me leaving that whole world and creating, diving into social media. I've only really been on it about 7 months. So I dove into social media, created a digital offering that helps people realize this level of consciousness, which the sole purpose of that is to affect millions of people. And once they empower themselves because of the way the sound, it's a visual audible experience creating a kinesthetic charge. So you evoke a brainwave from the material that you're exposed to, and you stay in I've measured it hundreds of times, but with using an EEG, you get in a gamma brainwave state that can alter your reality. So we're talking like this state right now, this present moment. And I always say, if you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you're feeling. And that feeling is that realization, that integrated part that you talk about, Tom. And it's like we're changing our value system from, you and I can speak on it. Australian culture is drinking. That's it. I mean, that's the foundation of all things, and it comes from our roots from England and whatnot. There's a deep-seated value system to unwinding, to relaxation. Is go to the pub, have some drinks, not go to the gym or go to the meditation ashram or wherever. It's still something that's in its infancy to become more culturally accepted. But in essence, I mean, this is a whole shift of this paradigm we speak of. And so how we see our reality, what we value, and that's why I always say, show me. I'm a show me guy. And so within the app that I created, you hit a button. You don't have to do anything. You watch it, you hear it, you feel it, and you feel like exactly you've had 5 pina coladas, 10 days of the Bahamas, and a full body massage. That is a side effect. That's the beginning. That's the end level. So the neurology is waking up. And now you're saying, hey, look, if I measure this, if I do this because people are like, well, okay, meditation sounds stupid. Sitting by myself, being quiet. Okay, well, it's about being able to master your neurological state, to shift and change your consciousness. So your emotions have a different onset. They're like, when people start to realize their emotions don't control them, they control their emotions, people are like, what? What are you talking? What do you mean by that? But it's actually a mastery, and it's something that can happen quite quickly. But moreover, is when you get into this state of physiology, and Tom and I briefly talked about it, and we'll start talking a little bit more about quantum physics, whatever. The understanding of this is when you can master that emotional state through your neurology, which is a visual, audible, kinesthetic charge, now you're off to the races because you've shown yourself. So for me, I like having someone measure it. If they do this app that I put together, they do 27 minutes. That's it. After the first time they use it, they can measure their results, which means that instantly you can go, did I get anything out of this? Because this is the biggest, I find that through all these years, and you could speak on it yourself, this is the thing, this is the contemplation. It's like, well, what did I get out of this? Well, your whole life will change. Well, it says who and how can I guarantee this? Well, let's start with sitting and relaxing and just creating a focal point, which becomes an awakening that changes all things. That sounds a little woo-woo to me. Whereas if you can measure it, like the way I put it out, you do 27 minutes, then I give you an exercise that measures your results instantly from the second you do it. So you go, I put 27 minutes in, it's equivalent to me feeling like I had an 8-hour massage, an 8-hour sleep, an 8-hour relaxation, and you need to be able to feel that shift in your whole physical state for it to be realized. And so that was something that I found really useful. What are your thoughts on that sort of access point? Because being in the space that you're in, teaching people all these sort of things, it's really important to validate it as your own experiences being real to you. That's what I've come to the realization. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's such an important thing to give people the tools, techniques to make it experiential in their body. We have a very cerebral society. We like to think a lot. We like to talk a lot. We like to listen a lot. But what that does is it keeps us very much in this sort of upper cranial sacrum area. And that doesn't give us the depth of experience into the body of lovingness, of gentleness, of kindness, of healing in this ecosystem in the body. And so for me, that's the foundation of what I do, is give people direct experience. And that's why we run retreats and why we run workshops. Even my keynote presentation tomorrow, there's no point me giving them 60 minutes of data unless I can give them direct experience. So incorporated in my keynotes is a direct experience of de-exciting the mind with some form of meditation. So that can validate the science. I'll give them lots of science, parasympathetic, sympathetic, nervous system, your biochemistry makeup, what happened with your brain functionality, your biochemistry when you're in that fight flight. But to take them into a direct experience, and there's so many different mechanisms. Your app sounds like a brilliant app for people to go and check out. I use mantra-based meditations. We use breath work. We use some yoga asana, and giving people an actual palpable experience on a physiological level really validates the data that they've got in their mind. Data is not enough to transform the world. We can read all the books and go to all the university lectures we want. We can sit in all the therapy sessions we want, but unless we get into the physiology and into the direct experience, into the energy of that, then we're always going to fall short. And I think this is what's happening for us for a long time, is that, not to discredit or dismiss the importance of sitting and talking with someone, definitely that can be supportive, as well as giving them the tools and the techniques to change a lot of what's happening in their physiology. Because if you've got a concept in your mind of healing, but you don't have a physiological sensation of healing, then the physiological sensation will override and trump the thoughts that you have in your mind of healing. So those sorts of things, bringing those two worlds together, is absolutely critical when it comes to transforming individual lives and collectively the planet as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, I could say it better myself, my friend. I mean, because it really is. That's the effect. And for me, and you have the same nature. It's like you need to show someone, because it's only conceptual. And I always tell people, your truth is the only truth you need to be concerned with. And authoritarians' eyes open up and they're like, whoa, did you just empower someone with the idea that they have their own perception? Did you empower someone with the idea that they can actually make a decision to determine what is valid or what is not? And I'm like, yes, I did. And so moreover, when you get that feeling, And this is part of like the ancient energetic practices, is where I teach Qigong, the real internal stuff, where it's palpable. You can shift your state of consciousness where you feel it, and you know when you're doing, whether it's a physical healing, a manifestation, magic. I call it magic. Magic is more detailed architecture of manifestation and how you sink into that feeling, because it has to be palpable. A lot of people have this misconception that when they ascend higher and higher, they become void of this sensation. But the physical body is the barometer of the tuning fork for your experience. Yeah. So whether you are out there, which is really in here, with your doing, like people always start where they get a taste, like near-death experience turns into out-of-body experience, turns into astral projection. Let's go exploring the dimensions beyond this one. And then, you have subsections where people have sleep paralysis, bringing them to this point. But when you get into the deep alchemy, you can do anything. And the thing is validating it for somebody. And so, the way that I structured that app was to turn on all the energy centers. And there's over 2 years worth of material in the app, but only any John Smith or Roger, who is a janitor at McDonald's, all he needs to do is do that for 9 weeks, and he'll be empowered because he has control over his emotions. That's all you need. And it's cheaper than one visit sitting on a therapist's couch for 2 hours. That is an empowerment, and you walk away with it, and it's yours forever because you have attuned the neurology. It's a whole different ball game, and people don't understand how powerful that is when you can bring that in, and you can change the state you're in seconds. And so, sometimes I'll have fun with, trance states, whether I go down on the strip here and I have a little day of street magic and shift people's consciousness, where we'll just play with just the concept of hypnosis. And people are like, oh, I want to be hypnotized. Really? Okay, boom. And then you watch their friends, look at them, and they go into a state. I'll take them into a state, erase their name, take their wallet and keys, have it in my hands, and wake them up. And they're like, okay, when are we getting started? And I'm like, their friends are laughing. They're like, dude, you were out. No, I wasn't. When are we starting? And I'm like, are you missing anything? I've got the wallet and keys in my hand. Can you see? And they're like, yeah, where is that? Now, what people don't understand is that's a reverse hallucination. That's a state of consciousness someone has shifted into where they no longer see anything. Now, human beings do this all day long. They do it all day long. They don't realize that their sensory perception is taking in what they want, when they want, how they want. And then on an unconscious level, we're going deep in the weeds, thousands, hundreds of thousands of points of information that are being implanted into your unconscious, that for you to have an epiphany one day to realize that maybe I'm having a deja vu, or on a spiritual level, something greater. This is so exciting. And when you get to be able to speak on this stuff with people like yourself that are deep in it and sharing with people, you're crossing those streams where you're taking someone who's highly in their mind and an intellectual type that's in, academia, in the world of finance, in the world of business, and you're giving them a seed of something completely new, an idea that is out of what they consider their control system. And then it's so much more powerful than what they thought they had complete control over. How does that feel to you when you see people's change like that?
It's beautifully fulfilling and nourishing to be part of something that, is an exchange and a dynamic between you and the student when we see them go through that transformation. In Sanskrit and in the Vedic tradition, there's a wonderful understanding of this substance called ojas. Ojas is the sort of the biochemical release of this sweet nectar of bliss in the body. And what activates ojas, among many things like being under a waterfall, but one of the things that activates ojas is this dynamic exchange between student and teacher when there's a healing process being played out. Teaching meditation, obviously, when you're healing people, there will be this incredible dynamic where the student will experience ojas and so will the teacher. And there's this wonderful uplift. And this is one of the great things that we've got these tools available to us now to elevate the state of individuals And not only is it elevating the student, but it's also elevating the teacher as well. And this gorgeous exchange that happens. And that's why many teachers feel fulfilled in doing what they're doing, is because the fulfillment is actually a biochemical experience. And to understand that and grasp that really validates why we keep feeling called, rather than watching TV or going to the deck chairs in Cancun. It's actually, I'd actually rather run a retreat, because the actual fulfillment is greater as the facilitator of that transformation for the student. And it's fulfilling for the student as well, because they're getting that activation. So it's a beautiful dynamic and a relationship that happens.
Yeah, it's like, it's so interesting, because I mean, we're kind of going down a simulating path of understanding things from a neuroplasticity level to just the energetic consciousness, right? And creating what someone would call, from a therapist, a hypnotist level, whatever you want to call it, a psychodynamic loop, they would call it, where you are creating this familiarity that comes with this understanding. And so now you're playing on this group consensus, like within healing. Even before I had any deeper understanding of the neurology aspect, I just intuitively understood it from the ancient teachings that I was trained in. But you get into a group healing setting. I've had up to 1,000 people, real time, not on virtual, and they all connect, and they all bring in their own little whatever it is. I got an ache of pain, or I'm dying from cancer, I'm doing whatever. And that collective, once you link them all together on from an electromagnetic level, and the transmission of everything is as one, using the premise of understanding quantum mechanics per se, but the entanglement, we're all interconnected. Now, when you tune that, the healing is profound. The consciousness that comes with it, and people just walk out of there, I had this problem, it's gone. Because collectively, they're all coming with the same intention, and they're all attuning themselves to each other. And you raise that consciousness, and you see profound things that you could never imagine in your wildest dreams take place, that goes beyond the realms of what people consider humanly possible. And I'm pretty sure you've probably got many experiences like that. Would you like to share any?
Yeah, it's a thing we have in our teaching. The wise don't bewilder the ignorant. It's not being patronizing or spiritual elitist. It just means if someone doesn't understand, I guess the analogy I like to use is that if there's a professor of quantum physics in fourth year university, and he has to start teaching his daughter's class, who's 8 years old, mathematics because the teacher's unwell, he has to fill in, he's not going to start teaching quantum physics to those kids, because they're just not quite capable yet of grasping that information. So there's this fine line of sharing capabilities and experiences that humans have had and can have with people that might be a bit bewildered or overwhelmed, or maybe even challenged by that information. But what we're seeing in our species is that we're in a timeline of evolution, and we're in a sequential growth period from thousands of years ago. And where we are today is just where we are today in that evolutionary slice of time. Where we'll be in the future is a whole other area of where we'll be as an evolved species. And we've seen these little prototypes emerge out of the collective field in the last 20,000, 30,000 years. And there's been a couple of people along the way that have shown capabilities that we idolize and bow down to and pray to, loaves and fishes and bringing people back to life and walking on water. And there's a great book by Swami Rama called Living with the Himalayan Masters, and it's about his autobiographical account in the 1950s of him traversing into the most remote regions of the Himalayas and coming across some incredible sadhus that were doing the things that Jesus was doing 2,000 years ago. It's just that these guys didn't have 4 publicists like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John to document and talk about their capabilities. But he observed things that were quite remarkable. And I've seen some things myself along my journey of people doing remarkable things. And we have that capacity as humans. It's just that we just haven't given it much attention. And there's a beautiful book by Malcolm Gladwell called The Outliers, which talks about the 10,000 hour principle, that if we apply 10,000 hours to something, we're going to get really, really good at it. And so we've got people with advanced superhuman capabilities simply because they've allocated the 10,000 hours to it. We've also got people that are really good soccer players, really good cellists, really good golf players, really good baseballers, because they allocate their 10,000 hours to it. We've gotten people become really good at Tetris, really good at Mortal Kombat, really good at shopping, really good at drinking, really good at taking drugs, because we apply the 10,000 hours to it. And so what we're seeing is slowly, gradually, we're going to see our species start to allocate more time, more preferential treatment to unlocking these superhuman capabilities. And you're probably seeing this already as you went from an sort of almost a hermit sort of type, teacher of some sort to becoming someone with social media and a podcast. And sorry, my light's just running out of battery. So
no
I'm going
worries.
to go a bit dimmer now. But I think we're going to see more of these superhuman capabilities, and we already are seeing more people with psychic capabilities, more people with mediumship capabilities, more people with clairvoyant capabilities, more people with telepathic capabilities, more people with healing capabilities. And this is just going to be an ongoing evolution as we evolve as a species into realizing our true nature and our true capabilities.
Yeah. Well said, my friend. Well said, because I use the access of consciousness that I have to affect someone's idea of reality. So, whether it's like showing them a physical healing where the flesh is healed before their very eyes, which is so common for me over the last 30 years. I could give you thousands of examples. Everything from looking at a swollen ankle the size of a watermelon shrink before my very eyes as someone stands on it, to gangrenous flesh turn back to pink flesh tone color within a few minutes, to tumors, to flesh opening up, repelling toxicity from the body and then sealing before my very eyes. This is the kind of stuff that I've been watching for decades, and it's a daily. It's like, what does that mean? It means that, a level of consciousness, and I attribute it to past lives, but I bring it to this point. And I sort of, when I embraced this whole path that I walk on now as a Taoist priest and understanding these ancient techniques and rituals that I teach people, the first and foremost, the only thing that I attribute it to is I'm childlike in my nature, and I accept everything at face value. I'm not conceptualizing anything. I'm not getting in my head. If this ritual says it's going to do this, then it's going to do it. So when I am forward with a moment of a physical healing, say, for example, anything, that only time you're going to access that level of consciousness is the now. And it comes with zero title. So to access that pulpability where you watch flesh transform before your very eyes from something that is broken to reset to a default, you have to be in the present moment, and it has zero title. I.e. example, yesterday my kids are running around, one tackles the other one, and they go face first in the dirt. They get up, they've got a lip the size of a football. In 3 seconds, 1, 2, 3, gone. And you watch it happen. It shrinks before your very eyes, and you go, I'm not taking any drugs here. I'm watching this flesh transform. How is that possible? Because it's a state. I don't look at the child as my child. All I do is enter the space of consciousness, and as the universe, I am the universe. I'm not asking myself for a healing. It's the incantation, the words are default, default, default. And it's realized, and you watch it transform. And this can come in the form of healing, manifestation, as I said, magic of much detailed, more architecture. But this state is a state that's normal. Do I need to shock someone with a greater sense of value? Use Qigong. Basically, envelop my forearm, take a skewer, run it through my forearm before your very eyes, pull it out. There's no blood. It seals up, and you look at me and go, what did you just do? And that shifts your consciousness. You have to stop. Or read someone's aura, give them their mental, emotional state inside of 3 seconds, and you don't know them. And they're like, how did you do that? It's just information. It's just sitting there in front of you. I can see it. And so people they're like, I love it when they look at me and I'm like, do you want an aura reading? And they're like, yeah, sure, magic man. Give me an aura reading. And then I'm like, you sure? And then all of a sudden I get 3 seconds into it, and then I'm talking about sexual dysfunction and and they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Well, I think we're good. We don't need to go any further, because I'm just reading from your perspective. It would be chakras. I'm just reading the chakras, and the information comes up. And if it's excessive or deficient, the information is shown to me. And so that's how I look at it. I go, look at this, and people freak out. I'm like, how do you even know anything about me? I've never met you before. It's information. It's right there in front of you. And this is where I agree with you 1,000%. The more, and it's like the 4-minute mile, the more people that see me do that, or I teach someone how to do this and teach someone else, all of a sudden they go, if he can do it, I can do it. That's all it takes. And that's that face value thing. It's like, so this is where the 10,000 hour thing is valuable, but it also can be realized instantaneously. I always tell people, you can listen to my podcast, you can listen to me talk, and you can have every skill set that I've acquired in this natural born life inside of the same second if you believe it. You have to believe it. And that's all it takes. It's like, well, that's simple. I believe it. No, this is a fundamental shift. And it can happen. I've seen it. I've seen students just acquire things. They just walk in and they're like, yep, I can do that. Oh, you did a 4-minute mile. I did it in 2 minutes. That's what we're talking about. That's that power, that empowering moment of you are one with everything. And that's kind of like within Taoism, that's it. The mountain is yin and yang, two sides of the mountain. The Taoist goes up the mountain to the point and realizes things as all, as one. And that's when you create miracles. That's when you create manifestation. And that's where we need to shift the consciousness, because people are like, well, what about the emotion? Well, the emotional state is very much a distraction for humans. And they're like, what are you talking about? Well, that's how you stay in the weeds. That's how you stay you're on the couch telling the therapist, well, why did mommy only give me a cookie when I was 5? No, we need to get past that distraction and have you realize that you can be in that. You should not punish yourself for who you are or where you've come from. This is a part of the cycle of how you acquired the consciousness, how you got on the doorstep of Tom or myself, and you're like, it's time for me to shift again. And so whether it's ayahuasca, LSD, crack, alcohol, pot, cigarettes, drugs, it's a tool until it isn't. And then people are like, that sounds, what are you, condoning someone's addiction? No. Understanding that there's no shame behind that. People attach themselves to that identity that they are that drug, and it never leaves them. So it turns into, I am John the alcoholic. And it's like, no, that was a tool that brought you to a certain place. You realize that it's having an effect on you where you're not getting any benefit from it. It's no longer a value, just like Tom was talking about. What's the value system? Where does it lay in that value system? Are you creating awareness, or are you becoming expanded or contracted from what it is that you're doing? And your intuition has brought you to the point going, it's no longer serves me of any value. I've come across gurus that smoke an ounce or a pound of dope every day, and they're the most enlightened people you've ever seen. But that's that person. Or you get Grandpa John, who's 110, who had a bottle of whiskey and 2 packs of cigarettes a day. And you go, how did he live to 110? Because he found that incredible place of being in the present moment. And all of a sudden, all that distraction of that emotional stuff that you want to feed into, there's no other species on the face of the earth that thinks about the future or the past. They're just in that present moment. And then it's like, this is the curse of a human, is you decipher that code and you realize that if you stay in that present moment, the healing is instantaneous, the manifestation is instantaneous, the realization of something greater. So all this stuff that you're speaking on just makes my heart just all warm and fuzzy, because this is what's necessary to help humanity realize the true nature of who they are. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm excited where we're going, and the work that you're doing as we start seeing, exactly like you said, breaking that 4-minute mile and making this become normalized and integrated. The interesting thing that's going to happen is, and we're already seeing that, is that the suppression of this information, the suppression of people that have that capacity, the society and the system that we're in doesn't really support health and happiness. The society and the system that we're in, particularly the economic model, it really functions and survives and thrives on people being unhealthy and unhappy. And so to break that pattern and have enlightened, happy, fulfilled, healthy, vital people that are sovereign in their own state of well-being is something that the system itself is very big and very powerful. And so they really would prefer people to be checked out, unconscious, unhealthy, and unhappy. And that's how you have control, and it's how you have authority, and it's how you have a commercial capitalistic system that works really well. So there will be, as we venture into this new awakening of the species and this new evolution of the species, there will be some deep resistance and suppression of that and control of that, because it doesn't augur well for the current powers that are in control. So it opens up a whole can of worms of discussion, something we probably don't have time to go down into, but it's a really interesting time, and it's exciting time because we're seeing this undercurrent of awakening happening and realization of the innate ability of humans to, as you say, get out of that quagmire, the weeds of the deep past and future sort of incessant worrying of the mind, the deep emotional ingrain into emotional states and emotional fluctuations and craving for pleasure, trying to avoid pain because of the emotions, and starting to get into higher frequencies, higher states of awareness, which frees us from that entanglement and frees us from the bind of those past experiences in this current state of our being, if we're not entangled in that emotional state. So yeah, it's a big shift that's going on, and I think we just keep going forward and support humanity in whichever way we can, and do what we can to bring people into that realization of their true nature, that consciousness, like you said.
Yeah. On a side note, for anyone who's new or OGs of the 126, the 126 is not some, and this is the app, it's not some calm sort of like headspace offering. You don't tinkle around on it and go, hey, I want a story time with Matt McConaughey or whatever. No. If anyone ventures to the 126, understand that it's a system. It's a very ancient system, and it has you realize very quickly you will come to know the true nature of your power very quickly within this system. All you do is hit play and follow it. That's it. It's not about, let me see, what do I want to listen to? Am I feeling relaxed? Because you want to train in this stuff. Just like Tom said, it's like, this is where you acquire a skill. And the whole point of it is to make it concentrated. So, when I witness the healings that I see, or I engage in something to create a frequency, the concentration of it is now. Now, 30 years ago, but it'd take me a minute to pepper it up. Maybe I need to sit in a lotus position, light 3 incense, and call in my guides. Not now. And that's part of the evolution of your connection with high consciousness, is that it becomes more and more concentrated, more and more condensed, so that you can access it instantaneously, as you should, because people are like, well, I can't manifest anything, but you're angry right now. Yes, you just manifested that. What are you talking about? Well, yeah. And you're a master manifester at that. And then all of a sudden, when you're angry, you're very, very clear and sober with your intention. What do you be? Because you hate this person. So you've engaged in all these levels of manifestation. Now we're going to deconstruct, take it apart, and have you go in the opposite direction to create the same realization. What are your thoughts on that?
Gosh, I mean, you've said everything you could say on that. It's such a beautiful way of saying things. And yeah, I mean, the main thing I can say is that I concur. I support that, and I wholeheartedly resonate with your teachings and what you're saying. So I love that the work you're doing and what you're bringing to the world. And I support all of the things that you're saying there.
It's just really exciting. You, my friend, are just a breath of fresh air for me to be able to, I thank the Tao for bringing you as an incredible being into my life path. And there are no coincidences. I don't believe in that. Perhaps maybe you do, or no, we're just kidding. But understanding that everything happens for a reason, and that realization, profound things take place. And I think that what's really exciting is that you're helping people that are organically spiritual in nature understand their own value, because so many of them, they give themselves away And they realize at the end of the day, especially any type of like body worker, energetic healer, they don't realize they're expending their own life force, which does not have to take place. And so a lot of them tend to give. And in most situations, they're working with broken emotional states because they surrender so much to the giving, but they don't understand if you can connect that and contain your physical vitality, you can tap into the universe and be 100% all day, every day, and never. The old expression, the honeymoon is never over. It's never over, and you stay in that state and that cultivation, and that's why I always and am biased, but I've never come across an internal alchemy practice like the Taoists in relation to Qigong, because we saturate the physical body. We're about nourishing this vehicle for the longest period of time within this incarnation, reincarnation, however you perceive it, so that you can stretch your consciousness as long as possible before you re-up into the next simulation. And that's a lot for people to digest. Maybe people understand it or don't, what we're talking about. But the realization is the more you attune this physical tuning fork, you get more out of the experience. And that's just my observation. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the untapped potential in us all is beyond imagination. And the force of the entire universe. This is something that creates solar systems, galaxies. We're in a galaxy of trillions of suns and solar systems, and that's just one galaxy in trillions of galaxies. So it's mind-boggling, the magnitude, and all of that's a force of energy, and we're part of that. And so sometimes even just grasping that on a little level, like this is what you're doing with the Taoism, is tuning into that energy force and utilizing that as a field, the same energy that creates an amoeba, a tree, and a galaxy, and a solar system, and a universe is the energy that we have access to, and the energy that we are, and so, I think where we're at in our evolution as a species is very, very, very embryonic stage of us really understanding and grasping and mastering the power of that energy. And when we do, really for good intent, for harmonious and loving kind ways, when we use that energy in that way, we're going to have a really, like, we can't even imagine what type of planet we're going to have. But what we try to do is inspire the audiences that we are engaged with to start to contemplate what that world might look like. What does an enlightened planet look like? And it's something, just to close here, to start to invite the community on a daily basis to contemplate, what do you look like as an enlightened person, and what does the planet look like as an enlightened planet? Because then that starts to give us a North Star and a roadmap as to where we're going to. The captain of the ship doesn't really know how to map out his journey, the navigation of his journey, unless he knows the port of his destination. And so what we wanted to start doing is thinking about the port of destination. What does it look like for us to be as an individual? I always contemplate, what does it look like if I'm more enlightened? If I'm how do I behave? How do I speak? How do I act? What do I eat? What do I do? And that gives me a roadmap of where I'm going and how I'm going to get there. And then we start to contemplate, well, what does it look like for humanity? What would we be doing? Would we have two different places having a huge conflict because they're different religions in an enlightened society? Would we have people having years and years and decades of trauma, impact, still, leading them to addictions and suffering and pain and abject misery because of something that happened when they were 10 years old? And so looking at what does an enlightened society look like collectively, and what does an individual look like? And I think that's really, and it's something that we'd like to invite the community that are listening to this to start thinking about on a daily basis.
I couldn't agree more, my friend. Before we go here, today's been amazing, quite frankly. I would love to just spend a couple of days hanging out with you, my friend, because there's so much we could share. But on the short term right now, I want to invite you. I'm putting together a consciousness expo here in Las Vegas in September.
Wow, amazing.
So, I'll have the exact venue probably in the next week or so. and the date is probably going to be around the 27th. So I want to offer that to you and see what your schedule's like, see where you're at. And I also want to ask you a question. What is your definition of consciousness?
It's such a good question. I grapple with this question all the time. And I've been grateful that I've never been asked that question, because I haven't got a clear answer. And yet finally someone's asked me that question. And it's such a broad question to try and answer. And the way I would see consciousness, or define consciousness, would be the infinite unified field of intelligence that is the unseen, the untouchable, the unknowable, as far as, it's that. It's what Einstein would call the unified field, what others might call string theory, what quantum physics is starting to grasp and try to intellectualize. However, as spiritual mystics have always experienced and touched on, it's this undercurrent field of intelligence that is bursting with all potential and all creativity, and all forms are born from it. So every single form that is in the universe is a manifestation and an extension and expression of that unmanifest infinite field of intelligence.
Wow. A lot of people, that in of itself, it's like that magnitude is still conceptual to most, but they have to validate it through their own journey, whether it be through meditation or perhaps a distant healing that you and I are probably more familiar with, this interconnection, as you put it, from the quantum aspect. But it's like you have these moments where, I had a student that has got a PhD studying the nucleus of a cell. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, Shifu. And I'm like, I've been teaching him this stuff for years. So the basic practice is to access the middle dantian, the access of all things. You witness the death of a star, the raising of the red phoenix from the ashes, and you open up the black hole energy, which is realized within that intercenter. Now, that's abundant, timeless, and it's limitless. Now, if you look at a closer aspect of that, this is an ancient Taoist practice. It's thousands of years old. The 0 point energy, the unified field that Tom is talking about, is the whole super glue of this whole conceptual thing. But he comes to me and goes, "You're not going to believe what I found inside the nucleus of a human cell." And I go, "What?" Black hole energy. And I was like, "Well, what do you know? What do you know?" But this just has this epiphany moment for all of us. That's something I know. That's what all the Taoists have known for tens of thousands of years. That's how we practice this. It rolls down. Same thing within your internal alchemy practices. People have known about this for thousands, as you would call it, the mystics. They've known intuitively in the core of themselves, understanding they're getting the whisper from the universe that makes it realized. But it's like one of those really refreshing, exciting moments when you have something else validate that's sort of like out of left field, out of nowhere. And they're like, "Hey, by the way, everything that you've known to be true is just doubled down on doubly known to be true," as that is the energy that we speak of. And so, again, I'm very excited that I have a new friend, and I'm really excited to explore that friendship in the future at some point. I want to reach out to you after this podcast and see whether we can hang out for a minute once in a while. But again, I want to thank you, Tom, for sharing your time with us today. I also want to end with what's going on with Tom today. Where I'm going to put all your social under this on YouTube, and we're on every podcast platform. I think there's like 20 of them. So I want to know what you're doing now. What are you offering the world that we can share with the audience?
Yeah, I firstly go back to your invitation, which I'm deeply honored and grateful for. I couldn't think of anything more enjoyable than being with you in Vegas for that 27th of September. The only other thing that would trump that is the fact that I've got a retreat booked in Bali, which happens to be from the 23rd to the 28th of September. So I'm taking some beautiful students into a deep immersion. We still actually have a couple of spots left on that. But if it was any other time, I'd be jumping on a plane and being there for sure.
I love it. We'll make it another time.
Another time for sure. I've been wanting many times to get to Vegas. I've been to Burning Man, didn't quite make it to Vegas, so that will be on my list at some point.
Yeah, well, you got into the state of Nevada. There you go.
There you go. I was close, very close. I experienced the desert in a slightly different form than what the desert would be in Main Street in Vegas at the moment.
Yeah. Oh,
but that was probably fairly similar in some respects. Lots of people doing crazy things. But yeah, it's been an honor being here with you today. What am I doing? I'm running retreats. I've got one in Australia in a couple of months, one in Bali in September. Doing a lot of supporting conscious leaders, how to build their businesses in my Zen Academy, which is a training program, educational, spiritual business training program for people. And then teaching people how to meditate and how to make this an experience, like you said, to experience that unified field, the field of consciousness in their meditation on a daily basis. So same outcome, different pathway, and all roads lead to Rome, as they say. And I love that, you've got your tradition, I've got my tradition, our practices, and we're all converging on making the world become more conscious, more aware of consciousness itself. We don't actually become more conscious, we become more aware of the consciousness that we already are.
Yeah, I couldn't say it better myself, man. I want to thank you.
Pleasure, my friend.
I'm really, really grateful for you, my friend. And in closing, I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master Sun Qing, and I'll see you on the next one, guys.